All right. Cool.
Excellent. I love that last question because, and thank you for the opportunity of explaining it because
Yeah.
a lot of people say, well, isn't that going to be bad for you? And we're like, no, 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 no.
Well,
This
they'll
is,
have to
this is,
shift to snus or or vaping, right?
yeah.
And
Or lozenges.
or right, or some of the other forms, and it probably will force a lot of the pharma companies as well. And Trey, you can
Yeah.
record this if you want, and a lot of the other pharma companies as well to help people get off that smoking addiction. And obviously, this is a better way to do it. I think about the lozenges and the patches, and when I was doing some work for another company that is in smoking cessation, one of the problems that they brought up was, with the lozenges and the gums is that, they don't get a lot of nicotine to where it needs to go in your brain, right? The blood-brain barrier crossing, which we talked about before, is a problem. So, Dehydrotech seems to answer a lot of those problems that exist with current NRT. What else can you do with pharma companies? Do you need to reach out to them some more, or, because there is a problem there, a shortcoming for that approach?
Yeah, well, there's a huge problem, and oral nicotine traditionally has been a nightmare. I mean, and people need to know that it has been a nightmare because the body detects the nicotine in the GI, the gastrointestinal system, and frankly does not like it at all.
Mm-hmm.
It typically burns the throat
Mm-hmm.
to a painful degree for some people. It can produce in many people, as many as say a quarter of all the people who try it, uncontrollable and severe hiccups. And for a large number of people, it typically causes GI distress, nausea, or upset stomach. So our Dehydrotech is already known because we've shown it that it reduces all of those side effects. I'm not going to say it eliminates them completely, but in most cases reduces it from say 60 to 95%. The
Well,
other
and I
thing
think,
is,
well, and Chris, and I think one of the reasons it does that is because it's able to avoid those side effects is because more of it gets to the brain, right? Isn't that the case? I mean, when you're smoking, that's a very effective way to get nicotine to the brain. But when you're chewing gum or putting, using some of these other methods, it goes through the whole, the circulatory system and goes across the blood-brain barrier, and only a small amount gets to your brain. So where all the negative side effects happens is before the brain, right? So if Dehydrotech is able to get a larger percentage of that to the brain, then you can use smaller amounts, right? Isn't that the thought behind that approach?
yeah, there are two main reasons why we're of such benefit. One of them is, as you say, because we can use a smaller nicotine dose and we deliver it so much more effectively. We've determined, by the way, up to 10 times faster and up to 5 times more through the oral mucosa.
Mm-hmm.
But also because of the way our tech works, we sort of crazy glue the nicotine to these long chain fatty acids,
Mm-hmm.
things like sunflower oil or olive oil, which of
Right.
course are very well tolerated, and the
Sure.
human body doesn't have any problems with those ingredients. So those are the two reasons we really reduce the nasty GI effects of nicotine.
Yeah, and that brings up just the beauty and simplicity of your delivery mechanism. It just uses sunflower oil, right? Isn't that the main one? And we use that in our food every day. So the concern about side effects, there just aren't really any. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, sunflower oil is a long chain fatty acid. And there are medium chain triglycerides, things like palm oils or coconut oils. There's also shorter chain fats, of course. But long chain fatty acids, not only do we encounter them all the time in our diet, most people don't realize we make them. Your body
Mm,
has a factory inside the pancreas and the gallbladder that's making digestive bile. And a major component of that digestive bile is, you guessed it, long chain fatty acids. They're so important to the GI functioning that your body actually recycles them several times a day to the best of its ability to reuse them throughout the day. So, one of the things, John, that really makes Lexaria different than the vast majority of biotech companies is that we are not trying to change or defeat the body's natural system. So often you see a biotech company or a pharma company trying to trick the body into doing something it doesn't want to do.
hmm
We don't do that. We actually work symbiotically with the body's natural systems and try to make it do more of what it was designed to do in the first place.
Right, right. Chris, I want to take a little left turn here and talk about a macro issue, and I'd like to ask all the company executives I talk to about this. But inflation, it's really cropped up, especially in the last couple of months. I mean, we saw it, I guess, probably a year ago, but it's really gotten big now. Not just in consumer goods and energy, but even in the biotech space with products you may need. I was wondering if you could share with us some of the observations you've had in the industry in terms of inflation and also just the ease of getting products that you need compared to, I guess, pre-COVID. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, it's I did my stint as an economist in earlier in my career from a casual way, and inflation and supply chain are major issues these days. There's no question about it.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a positive and a negative for us. The negative, of course, is supply chain. It is more difficult to get a hold of certain things today than it was 6 months ago. And, in some ways, those problems are lessening, and in other ways, they're really not.
Mm,
So, certain ingredients, certain things that we would purchase where typically we would have a 3 day delivery, sometimes now we're waiting 3 months. So,
wow.
that's a pain, but it's mostly a management issue in stocking and warehousing.
Hmm.
Now, on the inflation side, the ingredients or the inputs that we require to manufacture dihydrotech are so minute, and I mean they're so minute, that inflation is a non-event for us.
Okay.
And in
Even
fact,
if
it's
they
a
doubled, it
positive.
just wouldn't. Yeah, it wouldn't affect it.
Yeah, it's a positive because other companies we compete against, inflation is really, really important. For example, nanotech, most nanotech processes require some expensive ingredients,
Hmm.
and those expensive ingredients are going up in value. Whereas because we use plant-based oils, you know, and we use less than a penny. Think about that, less
Yeah,
than a penny's worth of inputs for each serving of dihydrotech. So inflation for us is not a problem. Probably makes us more competitive compared to
sure.
our competitors.
Yeah, because it's hitting everybody else and not you. Another want
Yeah.
to take another turn and talk about another interesting topic. Jazz Pharma, as you had mentioned, GW Pharma. I think they acquire Jazz acquired GW. They had a CBD approved product, and they might be a good partner for you. And what have you done to encourage that partnership or reach out to them? I know you guys have a study in the works on something that Jazz was working on. So what's going on there, and what do you think the future might be with that company?
Well, I can't comment too specifically on Jazz and our relationship, but I can say that Jazz is probably the number one CBD company in the world today,
Mm-hmm.
as you
Because they
rightly
have an
say.
FDA approved product, so that's a
That's
big
right. They
hurdle
have
to
an FDA
overcome.
approved product through the acquisition of GW last year. Also of interest is Pfizer.
Hmm.
Pfizer in December acquired a CBD company for about $6.8 billion. So you can really see that big pharma is getting interested in CBD, given the fact that we, Lexaria, have so much data on the delivery of CBD, our superior data and delivery system, that we really do expect that we will be having more and more communications with pharma. Traditionally, until now, Lexaria has mostly been focused on CPG, consumer packaged goods
Mm-hmm.
companies.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that we've always been planning for the better part of a year is that over the summer of 2022, our big human clinical study in hypertension will come to an end. Also, a human clinical study on nicotine absorption
Hmm.
will come to an end. And we've long maintained that, assuming the data is good and assuming the binders get filled appropriately with that data, we would start knocking on doors of the global pharma industry sometime around Q3 of this year. And that plan is intact. We think we'll have enough data to satisfy those types of companies' needs and curiosity in order to perhaps get into a relationship. And finally, This has been a long-standing plan of ours for years. This is something that we've been wanting to do since 2018, 2019. And if people are not aware, for small pharma companies like ourselves, small biotech companies, our our most likely path to commercial success comes through milestone payments with pharma, where you elevate a drug or a delivery system through phase one and into phase two and so on. And usually those payments are quite large. They're usually tens of millions and sometimes hundreds of millions of
Yeah,
dollars.
that could fund
Obviously, for
a
a
lot
little
of your
company,
programs.
yeah, it'll cover everything. And for my shareholders, I want to give you a little bit of comfort that we want to be able to cover these programs without issuing any more equity. And that's a real key for us.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, you've got two main programs, hypertension and nicotine, as I see it as analysts that cover you. But you're working on a lot of other things as well. I think there's seizure disorders, there's sildenafil, and then you've even got some other things. What do you think looks most interesting there in the non-primary indications that you're working on?
Yeah, we've got a big pipeline, and it's it's a funny thing. It's almost frustrating because we keep listen, Lexaria follows the science. We always follow the science. So we might have we might have 10 ideas in our brain. We run the science on and run some preliminary tests. And if four of them just don't work, well, we drop them. We go where the science leads us. So we have already completed work with antiviral drugs, with phosphodiesterase inhibitors, things like Viagra,
Hmm.
and a number of other drug classes where we've evidenced that, lo and behold, the Hydrotech delivers more of the drug more quickly, kind
Yeah,
of
which,
our base case. So there's a lot of different areas of future investigation, and even extending patent life on things
mm,
like Viagra, which of course came off patent, its primary patent, some time ago. Being able to revitalize one of these drugs with the Hydrotech processing might make them re-eligible for patent protection,
yeah.
which could be a huge benefit to some of these companies. So yes, we have a lot of opportunities, and we'll be continuing to follow them up, even though they're not our primary goal for this year.
Yeah. And Chris, I don't know if you want to talk about just the capital position of the company. One of the things I like about Lexaria is that you're actually generating revenues. And it's not enough to completely offset your R&D, but it does offset some of it. Where do you stand in terms of cash on the balance sheet? How far can that get you? And what are your capital plans in the future?
You bet. Well, last year in 2021, when the markets were stronger, thank goodness, we raised a total of about $15 million.
Hmm.
And our budgets that we put together at that time, we planned on spending roughly $5 million a year for 3 years.
Hmm.
And I'm delighted to be able to tell everybody we are bang on. We are hitting those budget expectations almost perfectly. So we're not overspending. And this is one of the things that people who know Lexari or people who know us actually are very confident in, because we are fiscally very, very prudent. We do
Hmm.
not spend a lot of money. So we're bang on in our budgets. We currently have, I don't know, somewhere between $7 and $8 million in the bank, which by definition will get us through until the third
About a year and
quarter
a
of
half.
2023.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, in addition to that, as you say, we are generating very modest revenues. And in fact, the last 6 or 9 months have been pretty poor, in part because of COVID and so on. That said, we are in negotiations with a couple of pretty significant global players, or national players in different areas of the world, I suppose, said more accurately. And we're hopeful that we may have some ability to sign some contracts in the near future. If we do, then our revenue picture is going to dramatically improve
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
should help to really offset
Extend that.
more of
Yeah.
our cash burn. So
Yeah.
we're in comparatively good shape cash wise, even though the markets, of course, have taken a beating.
Yeah, they've been pretty rough, but you guys are holding in there pretty good. I mean, in terms of just your R&D programs, specifically. So, well, Chris, that was great to have this conversation today. Enjoyed enjoyed having another talk with you about what Lexaria is working on. And hopefully we can do it again soon and perhaps in person.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed being here and always happy to answer all your questions.
Yeah, great. And again, CEO of Lexaria Biosciences, Chris Bunka. The ticker symbol for the company is LEXX.